When my grandfather passed away 2 years ago, I never imagined his house would become my problem. He left it to me, not to my parents, not to my older sister, but to me. At 27, I wasn't exactly desperate for a home. I already had a place in the city, close to my job, my gym, my friends. But when the will was read, my name was right there on the deed. It wasn't some grand mansion, just a spacious 3-bedroom house with a wraparound porch and a backyard that my grandfather loved more than anything. It needed work, new plumbing, a roof replacement, but it was in decent shape. I thought about selling it, maybe using the money for something else, but before I could even consider putting it on the market, my parents came to me with an idea. You know, my mom said, stirring her tea like she was testing the waters, it would be a shame to sell the house. It's been in our family for generations. You could live there, my dad added. Save on rent, maybe fix it up a bit. It wasn't the worst idea. I worked remotely, and having more space sounded nice. The mortgage was already paid off, thanks to Grandpa, so my only expenses would be maintenance and bills. I agreed, packed up my city apartment, and moved in. For the first few months, it was peaceful. I renovated the kitchen, repainted the walls, and set up a home office in one of the spare bedrooms. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Then, the suggestion came. Your sister needs a place to stay, Mom said over the phone one night. Just for a little while. That was the beginning of the end. Lena was 32, married, and 6 months pregnant. She and her husband, Daniel, had been struggling financially for years, but I hadn't thought it was this bad. Mom made it sound like a temporary thing, a few weeks, tops. I wasn't heartless. She was my sister, and I figured I could handle them being around for a little bit. So, they moved in. And immediately, things changed. It started small. Daniel was always in the kitchen, making himself meals at odd hours. Lena rearranged the furniture to accommodate her pregnancy needs. They weren't terrible house guests, but something about their presence made me uneasy. They never offered to help with bills, never restocked groceries, never asked if they could take over entire sections of the house. Then, one night at dinner, Lena dropped a bombshell. We were thinking, she said between bites of lasagna, that we should move into the master bedroom. I almost choked on my food. I glanced at Daniel, waiting for him to jump in and say she was joking, but he just nodded like it was the most natural suggestion in the world. It makes sense, Lena continued. The baby's coming soon, and we need more space. Plus, I get up a lot at night, and the master bedroom has its own bathroom. I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. You're serious? Lena put a hand on her stomach. It's just, think about it. The guest room is too small. It doesn't have enough storage for baby things. And you, well, you don't really need a big room, do you? I mean, it's not like you have a family. I set down my fork, feeling something hot rise in my chest. I own this house. Lena pouted. We're just asking for a little flexibility. You have the whole house, and No, I cut her off. I'm not giving up my room. Silence. Daniel shot me a look like I was being unreasonable. Mom, who had been sitting there quietly, finally spoke up. It would really help them out, sweetheart. I couldn't believe it. My own mother was siding with them. No, I said again, pushing my chair back. You can take the guest room, or you can find another place to stay. Lena's expression darkened. You'd really kick out your pregnant sister? I clenched my jaw. I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm setting boundaries. Mom sighed. Think about it, okay? Just sleep on it. I didn't need to sleep on it. I already knew my answer. But I had a feeling this wasn't over. I hoped that was the end of it. I thought once I made my position clear, they'd back off and make do with the perfectly fine guest room. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to an unsettling silence. Normally, I'd hear Daniel in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge, or Lena watching one of her pregnancy vlogs on full volume. But today, nothing. I walked into the hallway and immediately felt something was off. The door to the master bedroom was open. My master bedroom. My stomach dropped. I stepped inside and found my worst fear confirmed. Lena and Daniel's things were everywhere. Suitcases, clothes, baby supplies stacked neatly in the corner. My bed, the bed I slept in, was stripped down to the mattress, my sheets and pillows nowhere to be seen. The dresser drawers were open, my belongings carelessly shoved into boxes. It took me a second to process what I was seeing. Then, Lena walked in, acting like nothing was wrong. She barely glanced at me as she set down a pile of folded baby clothes on my dresser. Morning, she said cheerfully. I was so stunned I could barely speak. What the hell is this? Lena blinked at me, all innocent. Oh. Mom said it was fine. She said you'd come around once you saw how much better it is for us. I stared at her. Mom said? Mom doesn't own this house. Lena had the nerve to laugh. Come on, don't be so dramatic. It's just a room. It's my room. She sighed, rubbing her stomach like that alone would guilt me into submission. I get up a lot at night. It makes more sense for me to have the private bathroom. I took a deep breath, trying to control the pure rage bubbling up inside me. And where, exactly, am I supposed to sleep? Lena smiled, like she had the perfect solution. We moved your things to the guest room. It's all set up for you. I clenched my fists. You moved my things? She waved a hand dismissively. Daniel did most of it while you were out last night. You weren't even using half the closet space in here anyway. I didn't even know how to respond. I turned and stormed out of the room, barely able to see straight. The guest room door was open, and sure enough, there were my things, haphazardly thrown into piles, shoved into the much smaller closet. My work laptop buried under a mess of clothes. I heard a voice behind me. You'll get used to it, Lena said, standing in the doorway with a soft smile. Like she had one. Something inside me snapped. I turned to face her, voice low and steady. You have until tonight to move your things back. She frowned. What? I stepped closer, my heart hammering. Move. Your stuff. Back. She folded her arms. You're overreacting. No, you're overstepping. And I'm done with it. Her mouth tightened. Daniel and I need this space. I let out a bitter laugh. And I own this house. Lena's eyes narrowed. Mom said you'd be difficult. I gritted my teeth. I don't care what Mom said. I'm not moving out of my own damn bedroom just because you decided to take it without asking. Lena's face turned red. You're being selfish. You don't even need that much space. You have no idea how hard this pregnancy has been for me. I cut her off. I don't care. She gasped, genuinely offended. Excuse me. I took another step forward. I don't care. You and Daniel have been living here rent-free, eating my food, using my electricity, acting like you own the place. And now you've gone and taken my bedroom without even asking me? No. That's it. You're moving your things back today, or I swear to God, I'll throw them out myself. Lena's eyes welled up with tears. You'd really do that to your pregnant sister? I crossed my arms. Try me. For the first time, she actually looked nervous. She wasn't used to me standing my ground, wasn't expecting me to push back. Fine, she snapped. I'll talk to Mom. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, you do that. She stormed off, puffing like she was the victim here. I took a deep breath, staring at the mess they had made of my things. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lena must have called Mom immediately because, within an hour, I got the phone call. I knew it was coming. I could practically hear the disapproval through the ringtone. Sweetheart, Mom sighed the second I answered, not even bothering with a greeting. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Mom, they moved my stuff out of my own room. Without asking. Well, she said, in that patient, condescending voice she used whenever she thought I was being difficult. They have a baby on the way. Don't you think you could be a little considerate? I gritted my teeth. No, Mom. Being considerate would have meant asking me. Instead, you told Lena she could just take my room like it wasn't even mine. It's not just yours, she said smoothly. It's the family's home. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. No, it's not. Grandpa left it to me. I pay for everything here. The bills, the maintenance, the groceries. This house isn't some free-for-all for whoever needs it. She sighed again, like I was the unreasonable one. Lena is your sister. She's going through a lot right now. You don't know how hard pregnancy is. She needs a little extra support, and you're making this. I cut her off. Mom, I'm done with this guilt trip. They're moving back into the guest room tonight, or I'm throwing their stuff out myself. That was the moment the sweet, concerned motherly voice dropped. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said coldly. There was silence. I could hear her stewing on the other end of the line, calculating her next move. Then, finally, she spoke. You know, your grandfather would be disappointed in you. I nearly dropped my phone. Are you serious? He would have wanted you to take care of your family, she continued, her voice laced with faux sadness. That house was never meant to be just yours. He would have wanted. Stop using Grandpa to manipulate me. My voice came out sharp and unyielding. Grandpa left me this house because he knew I could take care of it. Because I work for what I have. He didn't leave it to you. He didn't leave it to Lena. He left it to me. And I'm not going to be bullied into giving it up. Mom let out a small, indignant huff. That's not what I'm trying to do. Then what are you trying to do? I snapped. Because from where I'm standing, it sure as hell looks like you're siding with Lena, even though she literally went behind my back and took my bedroom. Another silence. Then she said, I just don't understand why this is such a big deal to you. That was it. I was done. You know what? Since it's not a big deal, then Lena and Daniel can move out. She gasped. You don't mean that. I do, I said, my voice steady. I've been nothing but generous, and all they've done is take advantage of me. And since you're so concerned about them, maybe you should take them in. She didn't answer. I continued, pressing my advantage. I'm serious. If you're so worried about where they'll stay, then open your home to them. But they're not staying here anymore. Not if this is how they're going to treat me. Mom's voice turned desperate. You can't just throw them out. Lena is pregnant. Then she and Daniel better figure something out fast, I said, unmoved. Because they have 2 days to leave. 2 days? She shrieked. You can't do that. I can't, I said. And I will. She tried to argue, but I'd had enough. I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the counter. My hands were shaking, my pulse racing, but I felt something else beneath all the anger. Relief. I wasn't backing down. Not this time. The rest of the day was tense. Lena barely looked at me. Daniel avoided me entirely, sulking in the living room like a kid who'd been grounded. I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me into feeling bad about this. By evening, I'd had enough of the silent treatment. I walked into the kitchen, leaned against the counter, and crossed my arms. You have 2 days, I said, my voice even. Start packing. Lena turned slowly, eyes glistening. You're really doing this? I met her gaze, unflinching. Yeah, I am. She let out a bitter laugh. Wow, you're actually kicking out your pregnant sister. No, I'm kicking out the people who stole my room and treated me like a doormat, I corrected. And if you don't start packing, I'll do it for you. Her face twisted with rage. You are heartless. Maybe, I said, shrugging. But at least I have a spine. She stormed off, slamming the door to my bedroom behind her. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. This wasn't over yet. But soon, it would be. I woke up the next morning half expecting to find my things tossed out into the hallway again, or worse, my locks changed. But the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped out of my room, the guest room, which still made my blood boil, and headed toward the kitchen. I found Daniel sitting at the table, arms crossed, a half-eaten plate of toast in front of him. He didn't acknowledge me. I opened the fridge, only to be met with empty shelves. No milk. No eggs. No leftovers. I checked the pantry. Same deal. My jaw clenched. I had just gone grocery shopping 3 days ago, and now? It was all gone. I turned to Daniel, my voice sharp. Did you guys eat everything? He didn't even look at me. Lena was hungry. I let out a slow breath through my nose, trying to keep my temper in check. And you didn't think to leave anything for me? Or, I don't know, maybe buy more. He shrugged. We thought you wouldn't mind. I clenched my fists, barely holding back the urge to grab his stupid, untouched toast and throw it in the trash. I do mind. And if you're staying here another day, you're buying the next round of groceries. That got a reaction. Daniel finally looked up, his eyes dark. Are you serious? I laughed dryly. Dead serious. You've both been freeloading here for weeks, eating my food, using my water, making demands, and now, on your way out, you've managed to clean out my entire kitchen. So yeah, Daniel, either you replace what you took, or you and Lena can go hungry. His jaw tensed, but he didn't argue. He just stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door without another word. Good. Lena didn't emerge from my bedroom until afternoon. When she did, her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd spent all night crying. I might have felt bad if she hadn't been the one to cause this whole mess in the first place. Instead, she just sat down on the couch, arms crossed, staring at the wall. I ignored her. I spent the rest of the afternoon locking down the house, changing the Wi-Fi password, moving important documents out of common areas, making sure they didn't have access to anything once they left. I wasn't taking any chances. It was around 4 p.m. when my mom showed up. I heard the knock, but I already knew who it was before I even opened the door. She didn't waste any time. Honey, please, she started the moment she saw me. This is family. Can't we just? No, I said flatly. Her mouth opened, then closed, thrown off by how quickly I shut her down. I crossed my arms. They're leaving tomorrow. End of discussion. Mom let out a breath, pressing a hand to her temple like she was about to get a migraine. Why are you being so stubborn? Why are you so determined to let Lena walk all over me? I shot back. She flinched. That's not it. That's exactly what's happening, I interrupted. They stole my bedroom, ate all my food, and somehow, you think I'm the bad guy for not just rolling over and letting them do whatever they want. She's pregnant, Mom argued. She needs to learn to respect boundaries, I snapped. And you? You need to stop enabling this. She looked genuinely hurt by that. Sweetheart, I never wanted you to feel disrespected. But you did disrespect me, I cut in. The second you told Lena she could take my bedroom like it was yours to give away. She went quiet. I let out a breath. Look, Mom, I get it. You want to take care of Lena. You want to make things easier for her. But you don't get to do that at my expense. She shifted uncomfortably, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. She knew I was right. Finally, she sighed. I don't want to see our family torn apart over something like this. I shook my head. Mom, they tore this family apart the moment they decided they were entitled to things they didn't earn. I'm just finally standing up for myself. She didn't respond. Just then, the front door opened, and Daniel walked in with a couple of grocery bags. He looked between me and my mom, clearly sensing the tension, but he didn't say a word. He just walked past us and set the bags on the counter. At least he'd done the bare minimum. Mom turned back to me, eyes pleading. Just think about it, okay? I shook my head. I have thought about it. She sighed, clearly realizing she wasn't going to win this one. Fine, she muttered. But don't expect them to forgive you for this. I scoffed. I'm not the one who needs forgiveness. She just shook her head and walked out. I closed the door behind her, exhaling sharply. One more day. Then they'd be gone. For good. The final day arrived, and with it, a quiet tension settled over the house. No more pleading calls from Mom. No more half-hearted attempts at guilt-tripping from Lena. Just the slow, inevitable countdown to their departure. I woke up early, partly because I wanted to make sure they didn't pull any last-minute stunts, but mostly because I wanted this to be over. I was tired, mentally, emotionally, physically drained from the last few weeks. My generosity had been chewed up and spat back at me, and now I was just ready to reclaim my damn house. I walked into the living room to find Daniel assembling boxes, shoving clothes and baby supplies into suitcases like they were in some kind of rush. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't expect you to actually pack. Daniel shot me a glare. Yeah, well, you made it pretty clear we're not welcome. I let out a humorless chuckle. You were never welcome to take over my house. You just thought I'd be too much of a pushover to stop you. He muttered something under his breath and went back to stuffing things into a duffel bag. I moved past him and headed to the kitchen. I needed coffee before dealing with her. Sure enough, Lena finally emerged an hour later. She didn't look at me as she walked into the kitchen, filling a glass of water with slow, deliberate movements. Her shoulders were stiff, her hands gripping the glass tightly. Then, in a voice far too calm for the storm I knew was brewing inside her, she said, I hope you're happy. I took a sip of my coffee, leaning against the counter. I will be. Once you're gone. She let out a bitter laugh, finally turning to face me. You really don't care, do you? You don't care that you're forcing your pregnant sister out into the streets. I let the silence stretch between us, watching as she waited for me to break. I didn't. Instead, I tilted my head and said, No, I don't care. Because it's not my responsibility to house you just because you're pregnant. You and Daniel had plenty of time to figure things out before this baby came. Instead, you moved in here and expected me to take care of everything. She blinked, like she couldn't believe I was actually saying it. I stepped closer, voice low and cold. And let's not pretend you didn't try to steal my bedroom. You knew exactly what you were doing. You thought if you took it first, I'd just accept it. Lena scoffed, crossing her arms. It made sense. We needed the space more than you. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you needed it? Because you're pregnant? That's your whole argument. She frowned. I leaned in. Let me make something very clear, Lena. The fact that you're pregnant doesn't mean the world owes you anything. It doesn't mean you get to demand people make sacrifices for you. And it sure as hell doesn't mean you get to steal my bedroom in my own house. Her lip trembled. She looked away, as if searching for another argument, another way to manipulate me. But I could see it now, the realization sinking in. I wasn't budging. I never thought you could be this cruel, she whispered. I shook my head. And I never thought you could be this entitled. She opened her mouth to fire back, but before she could, Daniel walked in, tossing a duffel bag onto the floor. The car's packed. Let's go. Lena's jaw clenched. For a moment, she looked like she might refuse, might try one last desperate attempt to guilt me into changing my mind. But Daniel was already heading for the door. And for the first time in weeks, I saw it, defeat. Lena sniffed, swiping at her eyes. Fine, she muttered. We're leaving. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she followed Daniel outside, dragging her feet like a child forced to leave a playground. The second the door shut behind them, I let out a long, exhausted breath. It was over. I locked the door, just in case. Then, finally, I walked back to my bedroom. And for the first time in weeks, it was exactly the way it was supposed to be mine. I sank onto the bed, staring up at the ceiling, letting the silence of the house settle over me. No more stolen food. No more passive-aggressive comments. No more being treated like a guest in my own damn home. Just peace. At least for now. The house was finally mine again, but the silence felt strange. Not bad, just different. I had spent weeks suffocating under their presence, their entitlement, their constant attempts to push me into a corner. And now? They were gone. Just like that. I didn't feel guilty. I thought maybe I would. Maybe I'd regret how things played out. But as I walked through my home, past the kitchen they had emptied, the couch they had taken over, the bedroom they had tried to steal, all I felt was relief. I didn't have to walk on eggshells anymore. I didn't have to wake up wondering what new way they'd try to manipulate me. It was over. Or so I thought. Because I should have known Lena wasn't done yet. The first sign of trouble came the next morning. I woke up, stretched, and checked my phone, only to find 12 missed calls from Mom. And a text that made my blood run cold. How could you do this to your own sister? I let out a slow breath. Here we go. Before I could even process a response, my phone buzzed again. Another call. Mom. I debated letting it ring, but I knew she'd just keep calling until I picked up. I swiped to answer, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. What? Don't you? What me? She shrieked on the other end. Your sister is staying in a motel. A motel? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for her? For me. I stared at the ceiling, rubbing my temple. Maybe she should have thought about that before trying to steal my room. Oh my God, you're unbelievable, she spat. I hope you're happy. I hope you're proud of yourself. I sat up, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. I am, actually. There was a long silence. Mom started, then stopped, like she couldn't even find the words. You have changed. I let out a dry laugh. Yeah, I have. I stopped letting people take advantage of me. Mom scoffed. She's your sister. And I was her brother when she decided she had the right to take over my home. I shot back. But that didn't seem to matter to you. She's pregnant. She screamed, as if that somehow changed everything. I sighed. Mom, I'm done with this conversation. Lena and Daniel made their choices. Now they can deal with the consequences. I just can't believe you're being this cold, she whispered. I closed my eyes. Believe it. Then I hung up. I sat there for a few minutes, staring at my phone, waiting for the next call. But it didn't come. Not that day. Not the next. Just silence. For the first time in weeks, my life felt normal again. I went grocery shopping, restocked the fridge without someone eating everything within 2 days. I cleaned up, rearranged my space, reclaimed my home. I settled back into my routine, my peace. And after a while, the calls stopped. The guilt trips faded. And I realized something. I hadn't lost anything. I had just finally set a boundary. And for the first time in my life, I enforced it. A month passed. Then 2. The silence that once felt so foreign had become comfortable. My home was mine again, and I had never been more at peace. No more passive-aggressive comments. No more missing food. No more unwanted guests acting like they were doing me a favor by living in my house. At first, Mom still tried to push her narrative. She sent me long-winded texts about how families should stick together, about how Lena is struggling, about how I was the villain for not letting my pregnant sister take over my home. I ignored them. When she realized I wasn't playing along anymore, the messages slowed down. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Then one day, completely out of the blue, Lena reached out. The text was short. Hey, can we talk? I stared at my phone for a while, debating if I even wanted to open that door again. But curiosity won. About what? I replied. It took her a few minutes to answer. I get it now. I blinked. That was the last thing I expected. Get what? I asked. Another pause. How unfair we were. How much we took advantage of you. I didn't see it at the time. I was so caught up in what I needed that I never thought about what we were asking of you. I leaned back in my chair, reading the message over and over again, making sure I wasn't imagining things. Lena? Apologizing? And I typed. And I'm sorry. I exhaled slowly, processing those two words. I wasn't sure what I had expected, more excuses, more attempts to shift the blame. But this felt real. Maybe a month in the real world had forced her to wake up. Maybe she had finally realized that being pregnant didn't mean the world owed her a free ride. Maybe she had grown up a little. Okay, I replied. That was it. No gushing forgiveness. No dramatic speech about how all was forgiven. Just okay. Because the truth was, I wasn't mad anymore. I had already won. I had already reclaimed my space, my respect, my peace. And whether Lena was sorry or not, that was her burden to carry, not mine. She didn't push for more. She just replied with, "Take care." And that was that. A week later, Mom called. Not to argue, not to guilt trip, but just to talk. I answered. She asked about work, about my house, about me. And for the first time in months, the conversation felt normal. I still didn't fully trust that she wouldn't try to guilt me again down the line, but for now, it seemed like she had finally accepted that I wasn't going to be walked over anymore. And honestly, that was enough. Because at the end of the day, I had proven something to myself, something more important than winning an argument. I had set a boundary, and I had enforced it. And no one, not Lena, not Mom, not anyone, was ever going to take that from me again.